Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, Deep Sleep History. Before we begin tonight's gentle journey, I'd like to ask you a few small questions. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? What time does your clock say right now? Is it late in the evening, or has the night already grown deep and quiet? Perhaps you're resting beneath a warm blanket. Maybe the lights in your room are still on, waiting for you to switch them off. If that's the case, now is the perfect moment. Dim the lights, settle into a comfortable position, and allow your body to relax. Tonight, there is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to solve. For the next little while, we'll quietly leave behind the busy world of today and travel farther back than almost anyone ever imagines. Take one slow breath in and let it drift gently away. Now imagine that every sound of the modern world slowly disappears. No cars, no phones, no electric lights glowing outside your window. Instead, a warm breeze brushes softly across a vast river plain. Somewhere in the darkness, reeds sway beside calm water. Frogs croak quietly from the marshes, while insects sing their endless nighttime chorus. Above you stretches a sky unlike anything most people today have ever truly seen. Without city lights, thousands upon thousands of stars shine so brightly that the Milky Way seems like a glowing river flowing across the heavens. Tonight, we are traveling nearly 5,000 years into the past, to the land between two mighty rivers, the place later generations would call Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. A place where some of the world's very first cities rose from the earth, where writing was invented, where kings ruled from towering temples, where merchants floated along great rivers, where farmers learned to tame unpredictable floods, and where ordinary people very much like you, simply tried to live another peaceful day. History often remembers great kings. It remembers mighty battles. It remembers enormous temples and glittering treasures buried beneath desert sands. But surprisingly,
very few stories pause long enough to ask a much quieter question. What was it actually like to wake up on an ordinary morning as an ordinary person living in ancient Mesopotamia? Not a king, not a famous priest, not a legendary hero, just someone who had work to do before the sun became too hot. Someone whose family depended on good harvests, someone who laughed with friends, worried about the weather, looked after children, shared meals, and hoped tomorrow would be kind. That ordinary life is the journey we begin tonight. As the first pale hint of dawn begins to touch the eastern horizon, our story quietly starts inside a simple mud brick house. Its thick walls have kept the night's cool air trapped inside. The roof above is flat, supported by sturdy wooden beams, covered with layers of reeds and packed clay. There are no glass windows, only a small opening where the morning breeze slips gently into the room. The floor beneath is hard-packed earth, swept clean the evening before. A woven reed mat serves as a bed. Nearby, clay jars stand neatly against the wall, holding precious grain, dates and water collected from yesterday's work. Nothing here is luxurious, yet almost every object has been carefully made by hand. Nothing is wasted. Every basket has been woven patiently, every clay pot shaped with skilled fingers, every wooden tool repaired again and again instead of thrown away.
outside, the city still sleeps. The streets remain quiet beneath the fading stars. A stray dog wanders slowly between narrow alleyways. Somewhere in the distance, a donkey shifts its weight and lets out a sleepy bray. Near the riverbank, fishermen have already begun preparing their small boats. Long before the streets become crowded, before merchants begin shouting, before children laugh in dusty courtyards, before smoke rises from thousands of cooking fires, there exists this brief, peaceful moment, the calm before another busy day. Our host for today's journey is not someone history ever recorded by name. No clay tablet tells us exactly who they were. No statue was carved in their honor. And yet, people just like them made up almost everyone who lived in Mesopotamia. Without them, the cities would never have survived. The temples would never have been built. The kings would have ruled over empty streets. Perhaps our traveler is a farmer whose fields stretch beyond the city walls,
Or maybe a potter carefully shaping clay gathered from the riverbanks, perhaps a merchant preparing goods for the marketplace, or a mother already thinking about the long list of tasks waiting before sunset. Whoever they are, their day begins now, not because an alarm rings, but because nature itself keeps perfect time. The first birds begin calling across the wetlands. The eastern sky slowly changes from black to deep blue to soft shades of purple and gold. The cool night air won't last much longer. Soon the Mesopotamian sun will climb high above the flat landscape, bringing powerful heat that shapes every part of daily life. People learn to rise early, to work wisely, to rest during the hottest hours, to follow rhythms that have remained almost unchanged for countless generations. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the city waking one sound at a time. A wooden door creaks open, footsteps softly cross packed earth, someone grinds grain between heavy stones, a rooster calls from somewhere beyond the neighboring rooftops. Far away, a temple drum echoes gently across the sleeping city. Morning has arrived, and with it,
another ordinary day in one of humanity's very first civilizations. So settle comfortably beneath your blanket. Let your breathing grow slower. Allow the quiet sounds of ancient Mesopotamia to replace the noise of today. Because when the first rays of sunlight finally touch the mud brick walls, our journey truly begins. In the next chapter, the family inside this humble home will awaken, prepare their first meal of the day, and step into a city that is just beginning to stir beneath the rising sun. The first glow of morning has only just begun to spread across the eastern horizon. It is not yet sunrise. The stars are still visible overhead, although they fade one by one as the sky slowly changes from deep indigo to soft shades of violet. Inside the little mud brick house, the air remains pleasantly cool. Thick earthen walls have protected the family from the heat that will arrive later in the day. Silence fills the room. Then, very gently, someone stirs. There is no ringing bell, no clock beside the bed, no glowing screen waiting to steal the first moments of the morning. For thousands of years, people here have learned to wake naturally, guided by the rhythm of the sky itself. The oldest member of the household opens their eyes first. Years of hard work have made early mornings almost effortless. Before even sitting up, they pause for a quiet moment, listening. Outside, a distant donkey gives a sleepy call. Somewhere nearby, birds begin greeting the dawn from the tops of date palms. A breeze slips through the narrow doorway, carrying the faint scent of damp earth from the nearby river. It promises another warm day. Slowly, the family begins to wake.
A child rubs sleepy eyes. Another stretches beneath a woven reed blanket. No one rushes. The day is long, and there is wisdom in beginning it calmly. As everyone rises, the sleeping mats are rolled tightly and stacked neatly against the wall. During the daytime, this single room becomes a place for cooking, repairing tools, weaving baskets, and sharing meals. Space is precious. Every corner has more than one purpose. You notice how little the family owns. There are no overflowing cupboards, no shelves crowded with decorations. Instead, each object has earned its place. Clay jars filled with barley, small baskets containing onions and lentils, bundles of dried reeds waiting to become mats or baskets, simple wooden bowls worn smooth after years of use, a grinding stone resting quietly in one corner. Nothing unnecessary, nothing wasted. In many ways, life here is simpler than our own, yet every possession carries real value, because every single item requires time, effort, and skill to create. Even a simple clay cup represents hours of gathering clay, shaping it, drying it beneath the sun, and firing it in a kiln. Breaking one by accident is no small matter. As the household fully awakens, someone carefully opens the wooden door. Cool, warming air rushes inside. Outside, the narrow street is still mostly empty. The houses around you seem almost connected, their flat roofs standing shoulder to shoulder like quiet neighbors still asleep. Most buildings are made from the same sun-dried mud bricks. From a distance, the entire city appears to rise directly from the earth itself. Soft shades of brown, gold, and reddish clay blend together beneath the growing light. There is a peaceful beauty in its simplicity. A woman from the neighboring house steps outside carrying a clay jar. She smiles politely as she passes. No words are needed. The same people have lived beside one another for years, perhaps generations. Everyone knows each other's families. Everyone notices when someone is ill. Everyone celebrates successful harvests together.
Life in these early cities depend upon cooperation far more than competition. As you quietly observe, another neighbor begins sweeping dust away from the entrance of their home using a bundle of reeds. Soon, many families will do the same. Dust is simply part of daily life here. The streets are unpaved. Every passing footstep lifts tiny clouds into the morning air.
Keeping one's home clean requires constant attention. The youngest children remain close to their parents. They are still learning. Soon enough, they too will help carry water, gather reeds, watch animals, or grind grain. There is little separation between childhood and adulthood in this world. Skills are learned by watching, by copying, by practicing every day. Formal lessons exist for only a small number of children, mostly those whose families hope they will become scribes. For everyone else, life itself is the classroom. As sunlight slowly approaches the rooftops, more sounds begin filling the city. Wooden doors creak open, goats bleat from tiny courtyards, chickens scratch eagerly at the dusty ground. Somewhere nearby, a potter begins turning his wheel. The soft scraping rhythm almost sounds like music. Farther away, a fisherman balances his nets across one shoulder as he walks towards the river. He hopes today's catch will be generous. No one can guarantee what each day will bring. The rivers provide life, but they also bring uncertainty. A flood may nourish the fields, or destroy them. Rain may arrive at the perfect time, or not at all. Because of this uncertainty, gratitude becomes an ordinary part of life. Every successful harvest feels like a gift. Every healthy child feels like a blessing. Every peaceful morning is quietly appreciated. You begin noticing something else. The city has not truly awakened all at once. Instead, it unfolds gradually, like a flower opening beneath the morning sun. First the birds, then the animals, then the oldest workers, then families, soon merchants, later children. Eventually the streets will become lively with voices, carts and busy footsteps. But for now,
everything remains gentle. Everything moves at an unhurried pace. In today's world, mornings often begin with urgency, messages, appointments, deadlines. Here, the first concern is much simpler: food, water, family. The rhythm feels strangely comforting. As golden sunlight finally reaches the tops of the buildings, shadows stretch long across the narrow streets. The cool air is already beginning to warm. Everyone knows they must complete many important tasks before the fierce afternoon heat settles across the land. Inside the house once more, preparations quietly begin for the first meal of the day. Grain will soon be ground into flour. Fresh bread will be baked. Dates will be shared. Water will be poured into simple clay cups. It is not a grand feast, but it is enough. Enough to begin another day's work. And as the comforting smells of breakfast slowly fill the little home, our journey continues. In the next chapter, we will join the family as they prepare and share their simple morning meal, discovering what breakfast truly looked like in one of the world's earliest civilizations.
As the first golden rays of sunlight spill gently over the rooftops of the city, the little mud brick home begins to feel warmer. The cool comfort of the night is quietly slipping away. Soon the sun will dominate the sky, and every family knows there is much to accomplish before the afternoon heat settles across the plain. But before anyone heads to the fields, the workshops, or the marketplace, there is breakfast. Not the kind many of us imagine today. There are no sizzling pans, no steaming cups of coffee, no sweet pastries waiting on a table. Instead, the first meal of the day is simple, practical, and deeply connected to the land that surrounds this ancient civilization. One member of the family kneels beside a large grinding stone. Nearby rests a basket filled with barley, the grain that feeds much of Mesopotamia. Barley is everywhere. It grows well in the fertile soil left behind by the rivers. It can be stored for months. It fills hungry stomachs. It becomes bread, porridge, and even beer. Without barley, daily life here would be almost impossible. The woman pours a small handful of grain onto the flat stone. Then she picks up a heavy, smooth handstone and begins moving it back and forth. Slowly, steadily, again and again. The sound is soft, stone against stone, a quiet scraping rhythm that has echoed through homes like this for thousands of years. Grinding grain is hard work. The movement seems simple, but it demands strength and patience. By the end of a single morning, shoulders and arms may already feel tired. Archaeologists studying ancient skeletons have even discovered signs of this repetitive labor. Many people who spent years grinding grain developed stronger muscles in certain parts of their bodies, while their joints slowly wore down with age. It is one of those silent details that history rarely records, yet the bones themselves remember. As the barley slowly becomes flour, another member of the family prepares the small clay oven outside the house. The oven is little more than a rounded dome made from clay. Yesterday's ashes are gently brushed aside.
Dry reeds, small sticks, and bits of date palm wood are carefully placed inside. Nothing is wasted. Fuel is precious. A tiny flame appears. At first it flickers quietly, then it grows stronger, sending thin curls of grey smoke into the cool morning air. Around the neighborhood, dozens of similar fires begin rising at nearly the same time. Soon the city smells wonderfully alive. Fresh bread, wood smoke, warm earth, a hint of sweet dates, and somewhere nearby, onions roasting over another family's fire. The freshly ground flour is mixed with water in a large clay bowl. There is no packet of yeast waiting in a cupboard. Sometimes naturally occurring wild yeast helps the dough rise. Other times the bread remains flat, dense, and hearty. The dough is kneaded patiently with experienced hands. Children watch closely. One day they will know these movements by heart. Cooking is not written down in books. It lives in memory, passed from one generation to the next through countless quiet mornings just like this one. The dough is divided into small portions. Each piece is flattened into a round shape before being placed against the hot inner wall of the clay oven. Within minutes, the bread begins to bake. The smell is rich and comforting. If you close your eyes, it is surprisingly familiar. Across thousands of years, the scent of fresh bread has changed very little.
The wooden door closes softly behind the family. For a brief moment, you pause just outside their home. The morning has fully arrived. The sun is still low enough to cast long golden shadows across the narrow streets, and the air remains pleasantly cool. Within only a few hours, this same road will shimmer beneath intense heat, but right now it feels almost peaceful. You take your first steps through the city. The ground beneath your feet is firm, packed earth, smoothed by countless footsteps over many generations. There are no stone pavements, no painted road markings, no wagons rushing past at dangerous speeds. Instead, life moves at the pace of walking. People greet one another with quiet smiles and familiar nods. Nearly everyone recognizes the faces they pass. Some families have lived in this neighborhood for decades. Others can trace their ancestors back even farther. Children play together, parents work beside one another, neighbors share tools, ovens, and advice. The city feels less like a collection of strangers and more like one enormous family. The streets twist gently between rows of mud brick houses. Some alleys are barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Their narrow design is no accident. The close walls create precious shade during the hottest hours of the afternoon. Even before anyone understood modern architecture, experience taught people how to build homes that worked with the climate instead of against it. Above you, many rooftops are already becoming busy. A woman spreads freshly washed cloth across the flat roof to dry beneath the growing sunlight. Nearby, another family hangs bundles of herbs that will slowly dry over the coming days. Two children chase each other across a rooftop until their grandmother gently reminds them to slow down. The roofs themselves are almost like extra rooms. Families often work there, rest there during cooler evenings, and sometimes even sleep beneath the stars on especially warm nights.
As you continue walking, the city slowly grows louder. Not noisy, just alive. A pair of donkeys clop steadily down the street, carrying baskets overflowing with barley. Their owner walks calmly beside them, occasionally adjusting the woven ropes that keep the load balanced. The animals seem to know the route by heart. They have likely walked these same streets hundreds of times. A few goats wander near a doorway, nibbling at scraps of dried vegetation. A young boy gently guides them away before they can chew on a neighbor's carefully woven basket. His father laughs quietly. Apparently this has happened before. Some things never change. Even in one of humanity's earliest cities, mischievous animals still create small daily problems. The smells around you constantly shift. Fresh bread continues baking in dozens of homes. Smoke rises lazily into the brightening sky. You catch the earthy scent of damp clay from a nearby potter's workshop. A passing breeze carries the sweetness of ripe dates. Then just as quickly, the smell disappears, replaced by the familiar scent of livestock waiting patiently in shaded courtyards. Every street tells its own little story. Outside one home, an elderly man patiently repairs a fishing net. His hands move automatically, almost without thought. Years of practice have made each knot perfect. He smiles as two grandchildren watch closely beside him. He says very little. He doesn't need to. One day they will remember these same movements. Skills here are taught by observation, by repetition, by quiet example. Farther ahead, a woman kneels beside a cracked water jar.
Instead of throwing it away, she carefully seals the damaged area with fresh clay. A broken object is rarely discarded. Almost everything can be repaired. In a world where every tool requires valuable time to create, fixing something is far wiser than replacing it. This careful attitude extends to nearly every part of life. Clothing is patched, sandals are mended, baskets are rewoven, wooden handles are replaced. Nothing is wasted simply because it has grown old. As you reach a wider street, the city suddenly opens before you. This road is busier, much busier. People from smaller neighborhoods are now joining together as they head toward the city center. Farmers carry hoes across their shoulders. Craftsmen balance wooden tools beneath one arm. Merchants lead donkeys loaded with jars, baskets, textiles, or bundles of reeds. Several fishermen return from the river surprisingly early, carrying woven baskets that glisten with fresh fish. Today's catch appears to have been good. They exchange cheerful greetings with passing neighbors. One woman stops briefly to purchase 2 fish before continuing towards home. There is no loud bargaining, just familiar conversation between people who have known one another for years. As you walk further, the skyline begins to change. Until now, the houses have been nearly the same height. But in the distance, one structure rises far above everything else. A massive stepped platform reaches confidently toward the brightening sky. Even from far away, it dominates the city. This is the temple complex. Its enormous terraces remind every citizen that the gods are believed to watch over the city from above. The priests who serve there hold great respect. Many people will pause as they pass, offering a quiet prayer before continuing their work. Religion here is not separated from daily life. It is woven into everything. Planting crops, building homes, making business agreements, celebrating births, mourning deaths.
Every important moment is connected, in some way, to the divine. As you continue walking, you notice another remarkable feature of the city. There are surprisingly few empty spaces. Land inside the protective walls is valuable. Homes stand close together. Workshops fit neatly beside family houses. Small courtyards provide room for cooking, animals, and children to play. Every available area has a purpose. Yet despite the crowded streets, there is an unexpected sense of order. People understand their routines. Everyone knows where they are going. The baker heads toward the ovens, the potter toward his wheel, the scribe toward the temple school, the farmer toward the canals beyond the city gates. Their paths cross naturally, like streams flowing into a river. As the sun climbs higher, its light reflects warmly from thousands of mud bricks, giving the entire city a soft golden glow. The walls seem almost alive beneath the morning sun. Dust rises gently beneath passing feet, but settles just as quickly. Somewhere nearby, a flute begins to play. Its melody is simple and calm. Perhaps a young musician practicing before work. Perhaps someone simply enjoying the cool morning while it lasts. The music drifts softly through the streets before fading into the sounds of conversation, animals, and footsteps. You realize something remarkable. Although this city existed nearly 5,000 years ago, its heartbeat feels surprisingly familiar. People hurry because they have responsibilities. Parents remind children to stay close. Neighbors stop to exchange news. Workers worry about today's tasks. Friends laugh together. Someone forgets a basket and runs back home to fetch it. Someone else arrives late and apologizes with an embarrassed smile. History often feels distant when we read dates in a book, but walking these streets reminds us that ancient people were never simply names on clay tablets. They were human beings living ordinary lives. They loved, they worried, they planned for tomorrow, and every sunrise offered another chance to begin again. Ahead, the streets grow even busier. Voices blend into a gentle morning rhythm. The scent of spices begins drifting through the air. Colorful textiles appear hanging from wooden stalls. The marketplace is coming into view. It is here that farmers, craftsmen, merchants, and travelers from distant lands meet each day, bringing with them not only goods, but also stories from beyond the horizon. And that is where our journey will continue in the next chapter.
By the time you reach the heart of the city, the morning is well underway. The sun has climbed a little higher, painting the mud brick buildings with warm shades of gold and amber. Long shadows still stretch across the ground, but they are becoming shorter with every passing minute. Ahead of you, the marketplace slowly comes alive. It is not a single grand square filled with permanent shops. Instead, it is a lively gathering of people. Some spread woven mats across the ground. Others arrange baskets beneath simple awnings made from reeds or cloth. A few merchants display their goods from the backs of donkeys. The market grows little by little, almost like a flower opening to greet the morning sun. As you step into the busy streets, your senses are immediately filled with new sights and sounds. Voices mingle together in friendly conversation. Someone laughs loudly after hearing a familiar joke. A child calls out to a friend across the crowd. A donkey shakes its head, causing the small bronze bells around its neck to jingle softly. Wooden wheels creak as a cart slowly makes its way through the narrow lane. Unlike the silence of dawn, this place feels wonderfully alive. Yet there is no frantic rush. People move with purpose, but not with panic. There is time to greet a neighbor. Time to admire a finely woven basket. Time to ask about someone's family before discussing business. In this world, trade is built not only on goods, but also on trust. Many of these merchants know one another well. They have traded together through good harvests and poor ones. They remember whose father sold wool, whose daughter became a scribe, and whose son recently married.
Reputation is worth almost as much as silver. You pause beside a stall where a farmer has carefully arranged piles of fresh vegetables. Round onions, garlic bulbs, bundles of herbs tied neatly with reeds. Nearby are baskets filled with lentils and barley, their golden grains catching the morning light. Everything has been grown with patience and hard work. Every handful represents months of tending fields, repairing irrigation canals, and hoping the rivers behaved kindly. Just a few steps away, another merchant proudly displays rows of beautiful clay pots. Some are larger than your hands, others are tall enough to store an entire season's grain.
Their smooth surfaces shine softly after being carefully polished. Many carry simple patterns pressed into the clay before firing. The potter smiles as customers gently tap the jars with their fingers, listening to the sound. A clear ring tells them the pot has been fired well and is less likely to crack. Even shopping requires knowledge. Across the lane, bright pieces of woven cloth sway gently in the breeze. Some are plain. Others are dyed in shades of deep red, soft yellow, or muted blue, using natural plants and minerals. Fine textiles are valuable possessions. A well-made garment may last for years if carefully repaired whenever it begins to wear thin. Nearby, a woman carefully examines a length of cloth. She rubs it between her fingers, feeling the quality before making her decision. There is no hurry. Good choices deserve careful thought. As you continue walking, a pleasant aroma drifts towards you. Someone is roasting fish caught only a few hours earlier from the nearby river. The smell mixes with warm bread, crushed herbs, and sweet dates. Your stomach almost believes it is breakfast again. Not far away, another vendor pours a thick drink into simple clay cups. It is made from barley, one of the most important crops in Mesopotamia. The drink is nutritious and refreshing, especially as the day grows warmer. People gather around, chatting quietly while enjoying a short rest before returning to work. The marketplace is more than a place to buy and sell. It is where news travels. Long before newspapers or radios, information moves from person to person. A traveller has arrived from another city downstream. He tells anyone willing to listen that the river has been unusually high this season. Another merchant speaks of excellent harvests further north. Someone else mentions repairs being made to a section of the city wall. Small pieces of information spread gently through the crowd, changing a little with each retelling. Some stories are undoubtedly true. Others become slightly more exciting every time they are repeated. Human nature has changed very little over the millennia. At one corner of the market, a skilled metalworker displays tools made from bronze. The sunlight glitters across polished axe heads, chisels, knives, and sickles. These are precious items. Bronze is expensive because making it requires copper and tin, metals that often come from distant lands. Owning a fine bronze tool can make daily work much easier. A farmer studies a new sickle carefully. He weighs it in his hand, runs a finger gently along its edge, then nods with quiet satisfaction. If cared for properly, this single tool may serve his family for many years. Nearby, a basket maker sits cross-legged on the ground. Without seeming to think, his fingers weave fresh reeds into neat patterns. Children stop to watch. The strips pass over and under, until a strong basket slowly appears as though by magic. The craftsman smiles at the children's amazement. He remembers feeling exactly the same when he first watched his own grandfather work. Knowledge flows from one generation to the next, almost effortlessly. No written instructions are needed, only patient observation. You notice something interesting about money. Many transactions are not made with coins. Coins will become common much later in history. Here, trade often happens through barter. Grain exchanged for cloth, fish traded for pottery, oil exchanged for tools. Sometimes silver is weighed carefully to determine its value. Small balance scales appear on several merchants' tables. Every weight must be accurate. Honesty matters. A dishonest merchant may earn a little extra today, but lose the trust of customers forever. As the market grows busier, visitors from nearby villages begin arriving through the city gates. Their clothing is slightly different. Their accents carry subtle differences. Their donkeys are loaded with goods unavailable inside the city. Fresh wool, firewood, honey, goat cheese. They bring supplies. They also bring stories from places beyond the city's walls. For many people here, these travelers offer the closest thing to seeing the wider world. One elderly storyteller has already gathered a small crowd. He speaks calmly of distant mountains where strange stones can be found, of rivers that flow through lands no one listening has ever visited, of caravans that travel for weeks beneath the blazing sun. The children listen with wide eyes. The adults smile. Perhaps they have heard the stories before. Perhaps they simply enjoy hearing them once again. Not every tale needs to be completely true to be worth telling. The market continues filling with laughter, conversation, bargaining, and the steady rhythm of daily life. It is here that farmers meet craftsmen, priests meet merchants,
Children lead friends. Ideas travel alongside goods. Cultures mix. Friendships grow. In many ways, the market is the beating heart of the city. Without it, food would not reach hungry families. Tools would not reach waiting hands. News would not reach curious ears. Life itself would move much more slowly. The sun now climbs steadily higher. Its warmth is becoming easier to feel upon your shoulders. Many people glance toward the sky. They know what is coming. Before long, the midday heat will settle over Mesopotamia, encouraging everyone to complete as much work as possible while the morning remains kind. Our family has finished the first errands of the day. Now, one member of the household turns toward a nearby workshop, where skilled craftsmen transform humble materials into objects of remarkable beauty and usefulness.
The steady tapping grows clearer with every step. At first, it blends with the distant voices of the marketplace behind you. Then, gradually, the sounds begin to separate. The hollow knock of wood against wood. The gentle scrape of a blade smoothing fresh timber. The soft whir of a spinning potter's wheel. The faint hiss of a fire burning inside a small kiln. Without quite realizing it, you have left the busiest part of the market behind. The streets here are calmer. Instead of merchants calling to customers, the air is filled with quiet concentration. This is where much of the city is built. Not with grand speeches or royal commands, but with skilled hands that work patiently from sunrise until evening. The first workshop you pass belongs to a potter. Its entrance is wide open, allowing the cool morning breeze to flow inside before the day's heat becomes too intense. Shelves line the walls, covered with bowls, cups, jars, lamps, and storage vessels in every imaginable size. Some are still damp from yesterday's work. Others have already dried beneath the morning air, waiting to be fired. Near the center of the room, the potter sits on a low wooden stool. His clothes are simple. His hands, however, tell the story of his life. Every finger is coated with a thin layer of reddish clay. His nails are stained. The lines on his palms are filled with fine dust that no amount of washing can completely remove. He places a lump of wet clay onto the center of the wheel. With one practiced movement, he begins turning it. The wheel spins smoothly beneath his hands. Slowly, almost magically, the shapeless lump begins to rise. His thumbs press gently into the center. His fingers guide the outer walls. The clay responds to the smallest touch. Within moments, what had been nothing more than river mud has become a graceful water jar. Watching him feels strangely calming. There is no wasted movement, no hesitation, only years of quiet experience flowing through his hands. A young apprentice watches from nearby. Perhaps he is 12 years old, perhaps a little younger. He studies every movement without speaking. From time to time, the master nods toward the clay, inviting the boy to try. The apprentice's hands tremble slightly. The wheel spins. The clay leans to one side. A small bowl collapses before it is finished. The boy looks disappointed. The older potter simply smiles. He says something softly, then places another piece of clay onto the wheel. Everyone begins somewhere. Mastery arrives one patient lesson at a time. You continue walking. Only a few doors away, another workshop echoes with a different rhythm. Here, a carpenter carefully shapes wooden planks beneath the shade of a simple roof. Good timber is precious in Mesopotamia. Unlike clay, wood is not always easy to find. Large forests are scarce across much of the region. Many valuable logs must be brought from distant lands, along rivers or trade routes. Because of this, every piece of wood is treated with great care. The carpenter examines each board before making a single cut. Nothing can be wasted. He uses bronze tools that gleam softly in the sunlight. A sharp chisel, a polished adze, a sturdy saw. Each one has been carefully maintained for years. He pauses occasionally to sharpen an edge with a smooth stone. A dull blade wastes energy. A sharp one saves both time and effort. Nearby, another craftsman repairs the wooden frame of a cart.
Its wheels have carried heavy loads across dusty roads for many seasons. Instead of building a new cart, he replaces only the damaged pieces. The repaired wheel may continue serving for years. Children stop for a moment to watch. One little girl traces circles in the dust with her toe while listening to the rhythmic sound of hammer against wood. She smiles every time the carpenter brushes away a curl of fresh wood shaving. The fragrant scent of cedar drips through the air. For a brief moment, the workshop smells more like a forest than a city. Farther along the street, the heat becomes noticeable. A glowing furnace burns inside the workshop of a bronzesmith. Even from outside, waves of warmth spill through the doorway. The craftsman works carefully. Bronze is far too valuable for mistakes. Copper and tin have travelled hundreds of miles before reaching this city. Sometimes they arrive by caravan crossing distant deserts. Other times they come by boat along winding rivers. Every small ingot represents an extraordinary journey. The bronzesmith melts the metal inside a clay crucible.
The glowing liquid shines bright orange, almost like a tiny piece of the rising sun itself. With steady hands, he pours it into a carefully prepared mold. No one speaks while he works. One careless movement could ruin hours of preparation. As the metal cools, another apprentice patiently polishes tools completed earlier in the week. Axes, knives, sickles, small chisels. Simple objects perhaps, yet every farmer depends upon them.
Every builder relies on them. Every household owns at least a few carefully treasured tools. Without craftsmen like these, fields could not be harvested, homes could not be repaired, boats could not be built. The city itself would slowly stop growing. It is easy, thousands of years later, to admire great temples or towering walls. But standing here reminds you of something important. Every brick in those buildings was shaped by someone's hands. Every beam was lifted by workers. Every doorway measured by craftsmen. Great civilizations are built quietly, one ordinary day at a time. Outside another workshop, women sit weaving baskets from fresh reeds gathered beside the river. Their fingers move astonishingly fast. The strips pass over, under, forming neat patterns without hesitation. The baskets will carry grain, transport vegetables, store clothing, hold freshly caught fish. Some are tiny, others are large enough for a child to sit inside. Conversation flows gently among the women as they work. They discuss yesterday's weather, a neighbor's new baby, whether the river might rise this season. Work and conversation exist together naturally, neither interrupts the other. Across the street, another family spins wool into thread. The soft fibers twist slowly between skilled fingers before being wound onto simple wooden spindles. Later, the thread will become cloth. Eventually, that cloth may become someone's tunic, blanket, or head covering. Nothing appears instantly here. Everything begins as raw material. Everything passes through many careful hands before reaching its final form. You begin to notice how deeply connected each craft truly is. The farmer grows barley, the basket maker carries it, the potter stores it, the carpenter builds the cart that transports it, the bronzesmith creates the sickle that harvests it. No one works alone. Every trade depends upon another. The city functions because thousands of ordinary people quietly support one another every single day. As the morning stretches toward midday, the streets outside the workshops become brighter. The sunlight now reflects sharply from the pale clay walls. Shadows shrink beneath people's feet. Even the craftsmen begin slowing their pace ever so slightly. A sip of water, a brief stretch of tired shoulders, a quiet glance toward the sky. The hottest part of the day is still ahead. For now, though, the workshops remain filled with the gentle rhythm of creation. Clay continues to spin beneath patient hands. Bronze cools inside carefully shaped molds. Fresh timber releases its clean, woody scent into the warm air. And somewhere beyond these quiet streets, the broad rivers that made all of this possible continue their slow, timeless journey toward the sea.
As the sound of hammers and spinning wheels slowly fades behind us, another sound begins to take its place. At first, it is almost too gentle to notice. A quiet trickle, then the soft rush of moving water. With every step, the air grows cooler, carrying the fresh scent of wet earth and growing reeds. Without saying a word, the city itself seems to guide us towards the place that makes all of this possible. Because long before there were crowded markets, skilled craftsmen, or towering temples, there were two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. To the people of Mesopotamia, these rivers are far more than lines on a map. They are the reason the cities exist at all. Beyond the city walls, the landscape opens into broad, fertile fields, stretching toward the distant horizon. Unlike the crowded streets we have just left behind, everything here feels wonderfully spacious. The sky seems larger. The breeze moves freely across the open land. The only sounds are birds calling from the reeds, insects humming in the grass, and the steady flow of water through carefully dug canals. If you had visited this region without the rivers, you would have found a very different world. Much of southern Mesopotamia receives very little rain. The land can be dry, dusty, and unforgiving. Yet wherever river water reaches the soil, life flourishes. Barley sways gently in the morning breeze. Date palms lift their graceful crowns toward the brightening sky. Vegetable gardens thrive beside narrow irrigation channels. It almost feels as though the desert itself has agreed to step aside. A farmer kneels beside one of the canals. With a simple wooden shovel, he removes a small clump of mud that has begun blocking the flow of water. The stream immediately begins moving more freely. It is a small task, one that lasts only a minute or two. Yet it matters. Every field depends upon these canals working properly. One blocked channel can leave crops thirsty. One broken bank can flood an entire field. The canals demand constant care. They are never truly finished. Each season brings fresh repairs. Each flood leaves behind new challenges. Maintaining them is a responsibility shared by the entire community. You notice several neighbors working together further down the canal. One clears away reeds. Another strengthens the muddy banks with woven bundles of brush.
A third carefully measures the water's depth using a simple wooden stick. No one appears to be giving orders. Everyone simply knows what needs to be done. For these families, cooperation is not merely a pleasant idea, it is essential for survival. A good harvest belongs to everyone, so does a failed one. Nearby, 2 oxen pull a simple wooden plough through the soft earth. Their slow, steady pace has changed very little over thousands of years. Behind them walks a farmer, guiding the plough with practiced hands. The fresh soil turns over in neat lines, releasing the rich scent of earth that has been resting beneath the surface. Several white birds follow closely behind. They watch carefully for insects disturbed by the plough. Nature has quietly joined the morning's work. Not every field looks the same. Some have already been planted. Others are waiting for the next irrigation. A few lie empty, resting until another growing season begins. The farmers understand something we still value today. The land must be cared for if it is to continue feeding future generations. Even without modern science, centuries of observation have taught them when to plant, when to harvest, and when to allow the soil to recover. Under the shade of a date palm, an elderly man pauses to drink from a clay water jar. His grandson sits behind him, listening carefully. The older man points towards the river. Although you cannot hear every word, it is easy to imagine what he is explaining. How the floods rise, when the canals should be opened, which stars appear before planting season. Knowledge here is not locked inside books. It passes quietly from one generation to the next, one conversation at a time, one season after another. The date palms surrounding the field seem almost magical in their generosity. Their sweet fruit feeds families. Their leaves become baskets, mats, and roofing material. Their trunks provide timber. Their fibers become rope. Even the seeds find practical uses. It is no wonder that these trees are treasured. A single healthy palm can support a family for decades. Not far away, several women gather ripe dates into woven baskets.
They work beneath the shade, laughing softly as they compare the size of this year's fruit. One young girl reaches for a date hanging just beyond her fingertips. Her mother smiles, gently lifts her into the air, and together they pick it. The little girl beams with pride, holding her prize as though it were a precious jewel. It is such an ordinary moment, and perhaps that is exactly what makes it beautiful. Across thousands of years, parents have shared these same quiet moments with their children. Some experiences belong to every generation. A narrow pathfoot leads us closer to the river itself. Its surface sparkles beneath the late morning sun. Small fishing boats drift gently near the reeds, their owners checking woven traps placed earlier before dawn. One fisherman lifts a trap from the water. Inside, several silver fish flicker in the sunlight. Not a remarkable catch, but enough. Enough for today's meals, enough to sell a few at the market, enough to return home satisfied. He smiles quietly to himself before lowering the trap once more. Patience is one of the river's greatest lessons. Along the muddy bank, children search for smooth stones while keeping a careful eye on one another. They know not to wander too far into the deeper water. An older sister reminds her younger brother to stay close. He nods obediently for at least a few moments. Nearby, a flock of ducks glides peacefully across the calm surface. Dragonflies dart above the reeds like tiny flashes of blue and green. Everything here feels wonderfully alive. It becomes clear why so many people in Mesopotamia viewed the rivers with both gratitude and respect. They brought water, fish, fertile soil, and transportation. But they could also bring destruction. A flood arriving too early or too late could ruin an entire year's work. No family ever forgot that. Perhaps that uncertainty encouraged people to appreciate the quiet days even more. Today is one of those quiet days. The canals are flowing, the crops are growing, the boats are returning safely. Children are laughing, birds continue singing overhead. For this brief moment, life feels balanced. The sun, however, continues its slow climb. The cool freshness of morning is beginning to disappear. Farmers wipe beads of sweat from their brows. The oxen breathe a little more heavily. Even the birds seem to seek the shelter of nearby trees. Soon, much of the city will pause for the hottest hours of the day. But before that gentle midday rest arrives, there is still one place waiting for us. Rising above the rooftops in the distance, its broad terraces glowing beneath the strengthening sunlight, stands the great temple, the spiritual heart of the city, where faith and daily life have walked hand in hand since the earliest days of civilization.
From the riverbanks, your eyes naturally drift toward the highest point on the horizon. It has been watching over the city all day. Even while we wandered through quiet homes, lively markets, busy workshops, and fertile fields, it never disappeared from view. Now, as the morning gently approaches its warmest hours, our path slowly leads us there. The streets begin to climb ever so slightly. The houses become more carefully arranged. The sounds of the marketplace fade behind us once again,
replaced by a quieter atmosphere. People still talk, children still laugh, but their voices seem softer here. Many slow their pace as they pass. Some bow their heads for just a moment. Others whisper a brief prayer before continuing on with their day. For the people of Mesopotamia, the temple is not simply a place to visit once in a while. It is woven into the rhythm of everyday life. Before planting crops, people pray. Before beginning long journeys, people pray. When a child is born, when someone falls ill, when rain finally arrives after weeks of waiting, their thoughts naturally turn toward the gods. Faith here is as ordinary as bread or water. You continue walking until the great structure rises before you. From nearby, it feels even larger than it did from across the city. Layer upon layer of broad mud brick terraces lift the temple toward the sky. Wide stairways climb upward in long, gentle steps. The walls glow warmly beneath the sunlight, almost the same color as the earth from which they were built. Yet despite being made mostly of mud bricks, the building carries an extraordinary sense of permanence. Countless workers have spent years shaping every brick by hand. Others carried them here, others mixed the mortar, others repaired the walls after every season of rain and wind. Like everything else in this city, the temple exists because thousands of ordinary people quietly contributed their work. Near the entrance, several priests move calmly through the courtyard. Their robes are clean and carefully arranged. Their expressions are peaceful. They are not rushing anywhere.
Their day follows an ancient rhythm, marked by prayers, offerings, observations of the heavens, and caring for the sacred spaces entrusted to them. One young apprentice carefully sweeps dust from the stone steps. It may seem like a small task, but here every act of care is considered meaningful. Keeping the temple clean is a sign of respect. Nearby, another apprentice fills clay bowls with fresh water. A faint fragrance of burning incense drifts gently through the warm air. It is subtle, not overpowering, just enough to create an atmosphere that feels calm and reflective. Birds circle lazily above the temple walls. Some perch along the highest edges, seemingly unbothered by the quiet movements below. The city stretches in every direction beyond the courtyard. From this height, the narrow streets resemble winding ribbons. Tiny figures move between houses. Donkeys pull carts no larger than toys from this distance. Thin columns of cooking smoke rise peacefully into the bright blue sky. For a moment, everything appears wonderfully still. Inside one shaded courtyard, several people wait patiently. One family has brought baskets filled with barley. Another carries fresh dates. Someone else offers jars of oil. These gifts are expressions of gratitude. Not payments. Not purchases. Simply offerings given with hope and respect. The priests receive them carefully before placing them among many others. Some of these supplies will help support the temple itself. Others will eventually find their way back into the community, especially during religious festivals or times of need. The temple is more than a spiritual center. It is also part of the city's daily life. Many people come here not only to pray, but to seek advice, settle records, or witness important agreements. In some cities, temples even store valuable goods or oversee sections of the surrounding farmland. Religion and ordinary life are deeply connected. One cannot easily be separated from the other.
As we continue walking through the peaceful courtyard, a familiar sound catches your attention. It is not chanting, nor music. Instead, it is the gentle scratching of a reed stylus across damp clay. The sound comes from a shaded room nearby. Curious, you quietly look inside. Several young students sit cross-legged in neat rows. Each holds a small clay tablet upon their lap. Their teacher moves slowly among them, offering patient guidance. Carefully, the children press tiny wedge-shaped marks into the soft clay, again and again. Some pause to examine their work. Others erase mistakes by smoothing the surface with damp fingers before trying once more. These simple marks may not seem remarkable at first glance, yet they represent one of humanity's greatest inventions, writing. Long before paper, long before ink, long before books filled libraries, people here learned how to preserve words in clay. At first, writing helped record grain, livestock, taxes, and trade, but over time it grew into something far greater. Stories, poems, laws, letters, prayers. Knowledge no longer depended entirely upon memory. Ideas could now travel through time itself. The teacher gently picks up one student's tablet. He smiles, offers a quiet correction, then hands it back. There is no embarrassment. Learning takes patience. Every skilled scribe once began exactly this way, carefully pressing uncertain marks into soft clay. Outside, another priest slowly climbs the temple stairs, carrying a woven basket filled with fresh flowers and fragrant herbs. The scent drifts gently behind him. Below, life continues across the city. Farmers tend canals, craftsmen shape clay, merchants welcome customers, children play beneath shaded walls. Everything continues as it always has. The temple does not stand apart from this life, it stands above it, watching quietly. Almost like a gentle reminder that every ordinary task, no matter how small, has meaning. The sun now shines almost directly overhead. Its warmth settles across the city with growing confidence. The streets begin emptying as many workers prepare for the hottest part of the day. Even within the temple courtyard, movement becomes slower. No one fights the heat. They simply adapt to it, just as generations before them have done. From the high terrace, a warm breeze carries the scent of baked earth, distant river water, and fresh bread lingering from the morning. It feels peaceful, unhurried. Below us, the great city continues breathing in its slow, timeless rhythm. And as the afternoon quietly approaches, we follow that rhythm once more, descending from the temple and returning to the ordinary lives of the families whose simple routines have shaped this remarkable civilization since the very beginning.
As we leave the temple behind, the stone beneath our feet already feels warmer than it did only a short while ago. The morning has quietly slipped away. The sun now hangs high above Mesopotamia, bright and unwavering in the cloudless sky. Its light pours over the city without mercy, turning rooftops into patches of brilliant gold and making distant air shimmer above the streets. If you had never lived here before, you might think this was the perfect time to work as quickly as possible. But the people of Mesopotamia know better. For countless generations, they have learned an important lesson. You cannot fight the midday sun. You must live with it. And so, almost as if an invisible signal has passed through the city, everything begins to slow. The busiest hours of the morning are over. Farmers finish watering the nearest fields before the heat grows too fierce. Craftsmen carefully set aside their tools. Merchants cover delicate goods with cloth to protect them from the blazing sunlight. Even the animals seek relief wherever they can find it. A donkey wanders beneath the shade of a date palm and refuses to move another step. Its owner smiles with quiet understanding. There is no point arguing. In weather like this, everyone appreciates a little shade. The streets that felt lively only an hour ago are now noticeably calmer. Not empty, just quieter. Most people remain close to their homes or sit beneath awnings stretched across narrow alleys. These shaded spaces become small islands of comfort. The thick mud brick walls that kept homes cool during the night now perform another important task. They keep much of the afternoon heat outside. You step through the doorway of the family's home once again. The difference is immediate. Outside, the sunlight is dazzling. Inside, the air feels several degrees cooler. Not cold, simply comfortable. The small windows allow gentle currents of air to pass through the room. The earthen floor remains pleasantly cool beneath bare feet. Without modern technology, the builders of Mesopotamia have quietly mastered something we now call passive cooling. They learned through observation, through generations of experience, through listening to the land.
One by one, family members return home. The father arrives carrying his farming tools across one shoulder. His tunic is dusted with fine soil from the fields. The mother places a woven basket in the corner after finishing her morning errands. The children follow close behind, their voices softer than they were at sunrise. Even they have begun to feel the warmth of the day. A clay water jar stands near the doorway. Its outer surface is slightly damp. As the moisture slowly evaporates, it cools the water inside just enough to make every drink feel refreshing. One by one, each family member pours a little water into a small clay cup. No one drinks carelessly. Water is precious. Every sip is appreciated. Nearby, yesterday's bread is brought out once again. Although no longer warm from the oven, it remains perfectly good. Nothing has been wasted. Alongside it are fresh dates, a handful of olives, soft cheese made from goat's milk, and a bowl of lentils cooked earlier that morning. It is a simple midday meal, enough to restore energy, not so heavy that working later becomes difficult. As they eat, conversation flows quietly. The children excitedly describe everything they noticed in the marketplace. One proudly explains how he recognized the potter shaping a beautiful new jar. Another laughs while describing the stubborn donkey that refused to move. Their parents smile. Perhaps they have seen the same donkey many times before. An older grandmother listens patiently from her place beside the wall. Occasionally she nods, adding a small story of her own. She remembers when she was young. The city was smaller then. Some of the workshops that stand today had not yet been built. The canals followed slightly different paths. Certain families have moved away. Others have arrived. The city changes slowly.
Almost too slowly to notice from one year to the next. Yet over the course of a lifetime, those small changes become impossible to ignore. Outside, the neighborhood has entered its own peaceful rhythm. A dog sleeps soundly beneath a wooden cart. Its ears twitch now and then, but it never opens its eyes. Nearby, chickens scratch lazily through patches of shade instead of wandering beneath the blazing sun. Even the birds have grown quieter. Only the occasional call drifts through the warm afternoon air. Some people choose to rest for a short while, not because they are lazy, because it is sensible. Working beneath the strongest sunlight wastes strength that will be needed later. The body understands this naturally. A young child curls up beside his mother and falls asleep almost immediately. She gently brushes a strand of hair from his forehead before returning to mending a linen tunic. Tiny stitches appear one after another, patient, careful. The garment will serve another season because someone took the time to repair it instead of replacing it. Across the room, the grandfather sharpens a bronze knife using a smooth whetstone. The slow scraping sound blends beautifully with the quiet stillness of the house. He pauses every few moments to test the blade with his thumb. Not enough. A few more careful strokes. There, perfect. He wraps the knife in cloth before placing it back among the family's treasured tools. Outside, faint voices drift through the narrow street. Two neighbors have settled beneath a shaded wall. Neither seems in any hurry to leave. One repairs a fishing net while the other patiently weaves new rope from date palm fibers. They work as they talk. Their conversation moves from this year's barley harvest to a cousin preparing for marriage, to memories of a flood many years ago that nearly reached the city walls. No one raises their voice. The afternoon heat encourages slow speech and thoughtful stories. Time itself seems to stretch. From somewhere further away comes the distant sound of children laughing again. Their rest has already ended. Energy always returns more quickly to the young. Soon they are chasing one another through patches of shade, inventing games with nothing more than smooth stones and sticks. Watching them, you realize something quietly beautiful. Children have always known how to transform ordinary things into extraordinary adventures. That gift belongs to every age. As the brightest part of the afternoon slowly begins to soften, subtle signs of movement return to the city. A workshop door opens.
Someone lifts a basket onto a donkey. A fisherman checks the position of the sun before gathering his nets once more. The long pause is coming to an end. The city is preparing to breathe deeply again. The hottest hours are almost behind us. Soon work will resume, though at a gentler pace than before. Long shadows will gradually return. The air will become easier to breathe. And with the afternoon growing kinder, our quiet walk through Mesopotamia will continue. Following the people whose ordinary routines, repeated day after day, have slowly written the story of one of the world's first civilizations.
Little by little, the city begins to awaken from its quiet midday pause. The shadows are still short, but they have stopped shrinking. A soft breeze slips between the mud brick houses, carrying away just enough of the afternoon heat to make working comfortable once again. Doors open. Workshop fires are stirred back to life. Donkeys rise reluctantly from the shade where they have been resting. The familiar rhythm of the city returns, not suddenly, but gently, as though Mesopotamia itself has taken a deep breath before beginning the second half of the day. Our footsteps lead us towards one of the most remarkable places in the city. At first glance, it appears surprisingly ordinary. There are no towering walls of polished stone, no glittering treasures displayed outside, only a modest building with wide doorways that allow light and fresh air to enter. Yet inside these quiet rooms, something extraordinary happens every single day. This is where words are given a life beyond memory. Stepping inside, the temperature immediately feels cooler. The thick mud brick walls soften the afternoon warmth, while woven reed mats cover parts of the floor. Sunlight streams through small openings high in the walls, creating gentle beams that illuminate tiny clouds of dust drifting lazily through the still air. The room is peaceful. The loudest sound is not conversation. It is the soft, rhythmic scratching of reed styluses pressing into damp clay. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause, again and again, almost like the steady ticking of an invisible clock. Several young scribes sit in neat rows. Each has a small lump of smooth clay resting on a wooden board. Beside them lies a sharpened reed stylus, cut carefully so that its tip leaves tiny wedge-shaped marks. These marks may seem simple,
But together, they form one of humanity's greatest inventions: writing. Long before paper was folded into books, long before ink filled elegant pens, the people of Mesopotamia discovered that ideas could be preserved in clay. The teacher walks slowly between the students. He says very little. There is no need. Every movement of his hands speaks for him. He gently adjusts the angle of one student's stylus. Another receives a quiet nod of approval. A third smooths over a mistake with wet fingers before trying again. Nobody becomes a skilled scribe in a single day. Patience is the first lesson. You glance at one of the clay tablets. The symbols appear mysterious at first, tiny wedges arranged in careful patterns. To modern eyes, they may seem almost decorative, yet each mark carries meaning. Some represent sounds, others represent words or ideas. Together they record harvests, trade agreements, temple offerings, and family names. Without realizing it, you are looking at one of history's earliest written languages. Imagine how remarkable this must have seemed. For thousands upon thousands of years before writing existed, every story depended upon someone's memory. A forgotten detail vanished forever. A lost name disappeared into silence. But now, words could outlive the people who wrote them. A harvest recorded today might still be read years later. A business agreement could survive long after both merchants had grown old. Knowledge had found a way to travel through time. Near the far wall, finished tablets rest neatly on wooden shelves. Some are still damp, waiting to dry beneath the afternoon air. Others have already hardened beneath the sun. A few important records will later be baked in kilns, making them strong enough to survive for centuries. It is almost impossible not to smile at the thought. Many of the clay tablets discovered by archaeologists today survived precisely because they were baked so carefully thousands of years ago. Fire, which might have destroyed paper, helped preserve clay. History can be wonderfully unexpected. A young apprentice carefully carries a stack of fresh clay tablets across the room. He walks slowly. One careless step could damage hours of preparation. The teacher thanks him with a warm smile.
Even the smallest task matters here. Every lesson depends upon someone preparing the clay, sharpening the reeds, and keeping the room ready for learning. Outside the open doorway, daily life continues. A merchant arrives carrying a small basket. He greets the teacher respectfully before unwrapping several clay tablets from a linen cloth. One contains details of a recent shipment of barley. Another lists jars of oil delivered to a nearby temple. The scribe examines each record carefully. He compares numbers, adds a few fresh marks, then gently presses a small cylinder seal across the soft clay. As it rolls, tiny carved images appear like a miniature work of art. Animals, symbols, sacred figures. Each seal belongs to its owner, serving almost like a personal signature. Instead of writing a name by hand every time, a merchant simply rolls the carved cylinder across damp clay. No two are exactly alike. You cannot help imagining the craftsman who carved it, patiently shaping every tiny detail with remarkable precision. Even something as practical as signing a document becomes an opportunity for artistry. Nearby, another scribe reads aloud from an older tablet. Several students listen carefully. His voice is calm and measured. Sometimes he pauses to explain the meaning of a difficult sign. The younger students repeat the lesson softly. Learning here is not easy. Only a small number of people become scribes. The training can take many years, but those who succeed earn great respect. They serve kings, merchants, temples, and entire cities. Their work allows governments to function, trade to flourish, and history itself to be remembered. As the afternoon light shifts across the room, one student finishes his exercise. He lifts the clay tablet with both hands and presents it to the teacher. The older man studies it quietly. A long silence follows. Then, he smiles. Only slightly, but enough. The young apprentice's face brightens immediately. No loud celebration, no dramatic praise. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that today's work has been done well. Sometimes, that is reward enough. Leaving the school behind, you step back into the warm afternoon sunlight. The city feels different now, not because it has changed, but because you have. A few hours ago, these streets seemed filled only with homes, markets, and workshops. Now you realize something deeper. Every basket of grain sold in the market, every shipment arriving by river, every field measured for planting, every important promise between neighbors depends in some way upon the careful hands of people who record the world one small clay tablet at a time. Ahead, the afternoon stretches peacefully onward. The sunlight has begun to soften almost imperceptibly, and the city is settling into the slower rhythm that comes before evening. Somewhere in the distance, children laugh in an open courtyard, merchants finish their final trades, and the comforting aroma of fresh bread rises once again into the warm Mesopotamian air. Our gentle walk continues, following those familiar sounds toward the homes where another evening is quietly beginning. A long silence follows. Then, he smiles.
Only slightly, but enough. The young apprentice's face brightens immediately. No loud celebration, no dramatic praise, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that today's work has been done well. Sometimes that is reward enough. Leaving the school behind, you step back into the warm afternoon sunlight. The city feels different now, not because it has changed, but because you have. A few hours ago, these streets seemed filled only with homes, markets, and workshops. Now you realize something deeper. Every basket of grain sold in the market, every shipment arriving by river, every field measured for planting, every important promise between neighbors depends in some way upon the careful hands of people who record the world one small clay tablet at a time. Ahead, the afternoon stretches peacefully onward. The sunlight has begun to soften almost imperceptibly, and the city is settling into the slower rhythm that comes before evening. Somewhere in the distance, children laugh in an open courtyard, merchants finish their final trades, and the comforting aroma of fresh bread rises once again into the warm Mesopotamian air. Our gentle walk continues, following those familiar sounds toward the homes where another evening is quietly beginning.
By now, the afternoon has begun its slow and graceful descent towards evening. The fierce heat that ruled the city only a short while ago is finally beginning to loosen its grip. A gentle breeze returns from the direction of the rivers, carrying with it the fresh scent of water, reeds, and damp earth. It is almost as though the land itself lets out a long, quiet sigh of relief. Across the city, the pace of life begins to change once again. The busiest work of the day is nearly finished. In the fields beyond the walls, farmers gather their wooden tools. One by one they close the small gates that control the flow of water into the irrigation canals. They take one final look across the barley fields, satisfied that everything will be safe until tomorrow morning. The oxen, who have worked patiently since sunrise, begin their slow journey home. Their heavy footsteps leave familiar prints in the soft earth. A farmer reaches out and gently pats one animal on its neck. There is affection in the gesture. These animals are not simply workers, they are trusted companions in the endless cycle of planting and harvest. Back in the city, the marketplace is also preparing for evening. Merchants count what remains of their goods. Some smile quietly, pleased with a successful day. Others pack away baskets that are still half full, hoping tomorrow will bring more customers. Nothing is thrown away. Fresh vegetables are wrapped carefully in damp cloth. Grain is poured back into storage jars. Clay lamps are covered to protect them from dust. Every object is returned to its proper place. The market that seemed so lively this morning now slowly folds itself away, almost like a bird tucking its wings before nightfall. Children, meanwhile, have no interest in counting the hours. For them, the cooler air means only one thing: more time to play. A group of boys races through the narrow streets with small hoops made from woven reeds, laughing as they try to keep them rolling over the uneven ground. Nearby, two girls use smooth pebbles to invent a game whose rules have probably been passed from older brothers and sisters for many years. An elderly woman watches them from the doorway of her home. Every now and then she smiles, recognizing the same games she played when she was their age. Some traditions never need to be written down.
They survive simply because each generation delights in teaching the next. As we return to the family's neighborhood, familiar faces appear once again. The potter we visited earlier carefully carries the last of today's finished vessels into his workshop. He pauses to admire one particularly elegant water jar before placing it safely on a shelf. Nearby, the carpenter brushes sawdust from his workbench. The scent of fresh cedar still lingers in the air. Across the street, the basket weavers gather the remaining reeds into neat bundles, ready for tomorrow's work. The entire city seems to move in harmony, each person finishing their own tasks at almost the same time. Smoke begins rising from dozens of homes, not thick clouds, but soft ribbons drifting lazily into the evening sky. One by one, cooking fires are lit. The familiar smell of baking bread soon follows, then roasted onions, fresh herbs, lentils gently simmering inside clay pots. The scents drift through the neighborhood, mixing together until it becomes impossible to tell which meal belongs to which family. Hunger quietly reminds everyone that the day is almost complete. Inside the family's home, preparations for the evening meal begin with practiced ease. There is no written recipe hanging on the wall, no measuring cups, no ticking timer. Everything is guided by experience. A clay pot rests above the fire. Inside, lentils cook slowly with onions, garlic, and fragrant herbs gathered from the nearby fields. Someone tears fresh bread into smaller pieces. Another washes a handful of cucumbers in cool water. A bowl of ripe dates is placed nearby, their rich sweetness baking to end the meal.
The youngest child eagerly watches the pot, hoping dinner will somehow finish cooking more quickly if he stares at it long enough. His older sister laughs softly. She remembers doing exactly the same thing. Their mother smiles without looking up from her work. Some things about childhood never seem to change. As the food cooks, the family speaks quietly about the day.
The father tells everyone that one section of the irrigation canal may need repairs before the next planting season. The grandmother remembers a flood many years ago that reshaped that very same canal. Her story grows slowly, filled with careful details rather than dramatic excitement. No one interrupts. They have heard parts of it before. Still, they enjoy hearing it again. Stories shared around the evening meal are not simply entertainment. They are memory. They are history. They are lessons carried from one generation into the next. The children speak eagerly about everything they have seen. The marketplace, the potter's wheel, the scribes pressing mysterious marks into clay, the temple standing high above the city. Each small adventure feels enormous through a child's eyes. The adults listen patiently. Perhaps they enjoy seeing their familiar world become new again through youthful curiosity. At last, the meal is ready. Everyone gathers together on woven reed mats. The clay bowls are placed carefully in the center. Fresh bread is passed from hand to hand. There is no sense of hurry. No one eats standing. This is one of the few moments in the day when work truly pauses. The first taste is warm and comforting. The lentils are soft. The onions have become sweet after cooking slowly over the fire. Fresh herbs add gentle fragrance. It is not a feast fit for a king. It does not need to be. After a long day's work, even a simple meal shared with family becomes something deeply satisfying. Outside, evening continues settling across the neighborhood. The sunlight grows softer with every passing moment. Golden light spills across the mud brick walls, making them glow almost as though they were made of polished bronze. Long shadows stretch across the narrow streets once again. A cool breeze rustles the leaves of nearby date palms. The day's heat is finally giving way to comfort. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, birds begin returning to their nests. Their songs are quieter now, slower. The city itself seems to follow their example. Voices soften, footsteps become fewer. The excitement of the marketplace has faded into peaceful conversation shared between neighbors sitting outside their homes. The family finishes eating. One child carefully gathers the empty bowls. Another helps brush away the last crumbs of bread. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is left carelessly behind. The cooking fire is gently reduced to glowing embers that will make tomorrow morning easier to begin. Outside, the western sky has begun changing from brilliant gold to gentle shades of orange and rose. Soon, the first stars will quietly appear above Mesopotamia, just as they have done for countless generations before. And as the evening deepens, the city prepares for one final chapter before sleep, a time when work is finished, stories are shared beneath the open sky, and the ancient world grows wonderfully quiet once more. The last glow of the sun lingers quietly along the western horizon. For a few precious moments, the entire city seems wrapped in golden light. The mud brick walls, which appeared pale beneath the afternoon sun, now glow with rich shades of amber and honey. Even the dust in the streets seems softer. The day has almost reached its end. Across Mesopotamia, work has finally given way to rest. Cooking fires burn low. The smell of fresh bread slowly fades, replaced by the comforting scent of warm earth cooling after a long day beneath the sun. One by one, families step outside their homes. The evening air is simply too pleasant to remain indoors. Flat rooftops begin filling with quiet life. Children climb the short stairways with practiced ease. Parents carry woven mats beneath one arm. Grandparents follow more slowly, smiling as they watch the younger ones race ahead. For many households, the rooftop becomes the most comfortable place to spend the evening. The breeze flows freely here. Above, the sky stretches endlessly in every direction. From this height, you can see the city settling into peaceful silence. Smoke rises in thin blue ribbons before disappearing into the fading light. Far away, the great temple still stands above the rooftops, now glowing softly beneath the colors of sunset. The rivers reflect the sky like polished bronze. The whole landscape feels calm, unhurried, almost timeless. Our family spreads a woven reed mat across the flat roof. The youngest child immediately lies down, staring upward. The first star has appeared, then another, and another. Without electric lights, the night sky becomes something truly extraordinary. Thousands of stars slowly awaken overhead. The pale ribbon of the Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a silent river flowing above the rivers below. For the people of Mesopotamia, these stars are far more than beautiful lights. They are companions.
Guides. Calendars. For generations, careful observers have watched the heavens night after night. They know when certain stars rise before dawn. They notice how the moon changes shape.
They recognize the slow wandering of the brightest planets across the sky. These observations help farmers understand the seasons. They help travelers find their direction. They inspire priests to reflect upon the order of the universe. To us, astronomy and storytelling may seem like different things, but here they often walk side by side. A grandfather points toward a bright star low in the east. The children follow his finger. He begins telling an old story. His voice is calm and gentle, rising only slightly above the evening breeze. Perhaps the story has been told hundreds of times, perhaps thousands. No one seems concerned. The children still listen with wide eyes. A good story never grows old. As he speaks, tiny details are added almost without thinking. The sound of distant birds returning to the reeds, the soft chirping of crickets hidden among the rooftops, the occasional splash of a fish somewhere along the riverbank. The world itself seems to accompany his tale. The grandmother smiles quietly as she continues weaving a small basket. Even after a full day of work, her hands move with remarkable confidence. She barely needs to look down. Years of practice have turned every movement into instinct. Beside her, the children's mother carefully mends a linen tunic that has begun to fray at the sleeve. One neat stitch follows another. The conversation continues naturally around her. Work and rest are not always separate here. Sometimes they exist together in perfect balance. Across neighboring rooftops, similar scenes unfold. One family laughs together after a child proudly retells something amusing that happened in the marketplace. Another quietly sings a gentle melody while rocking a sleepy baby.
A father points toward the constellations, explaining which stars help signal the coming planting season. No rooftop is exactly the same, yet they all share the same peaceful rhythm. Somewhere nearby, the soft notes of a flute drift into the evening air. The melody is simple, unhurried. There is no audience, no grand performance. Perhaps someone simply enjoys playing beneath the stars after finishing the day's work. The music floats gently above the rooftops before blending into the chorus of insects and distant frogs along the river. The city itself seems to breathe more slowly now. The busy sounds of hammers and market stalls have disappeared completely. Even the donkeys that filled the streets this morning have settled into quiet corners for the night. Only an occasional bark from a dog echoes briefly before fading once more into silence. Looking upward, it becomes easy to understand why ancient people spent so much time studying the heavens. Without the distractions of the modern world, the sky demands attention. The stars appear so numerous that counting them feels impossible. A bright shooting star suddenly crosses the darkness. One of the children gasps in surprise. The adults smile. Perhaps they silently make a wish. Perhaps they simply enjoy the unexpected beauty of the moment. Either way, no one rushes to explain it. Some mysteries are allowed to remain mysteries. The grandfather's story finally comes to an end. For a little while, nobody speaks. The silence feels comfortable, not empty, simply shared. It is the kind of silence that exists only between people who know one another well. Eventually, the youngest child begins asking questions. What lies beyond the rivers? Do people live beyond those distant hills? Has anyone ever reached the place where the stars touch the earth? The adults exchange gentle smiles. They know the stars never touch the earth, but they also know that curiosity is something precious. Instead of dismissing the questions, they answer thoughtfully. Some speak of distant cities reached by traders. Others describe mountains few people have ever seen. One mentions great forests far beyond the horizon. The children listen carefully, building entire worlds inside their imaginations. For most of them, these stories are the closest they will ever come to traveling beyond Mesopotamia. As the evening grows deeper, a cool breeze passes across the rooftops. It carries the sweet fragrance of date palms, mixed with the faint smell of river water. The warmth of the day has almost completely disappeared. The city feels wonderfully comfortable once again. Some families begin gathering their blankets. Others remain outside a little longer, reluctant to leave the beauty of the night sky. Our family lingers for just a few more quiet moments. No one feels the need to hurry. Tomorrow's work will arrive soon enough. Tonight belongs to rest. Above them, the stars continue their slow journey across the heavens, just as they have for countless generations. Below, one of humanity's first great cities grows quieter with every passing minute. Windows darken, voices fade, footsteps become rare, and almost without noticing, Mesopotamia gently prepares itself for sleep.
The stories have come to an end. For a little while, no one speaks. The family simply sits together beneath the stars, listening to the quiet sounds of the night. A gentle breeze moves across the rooftops, cool now after the long warmth of the day. It carries the scent of river water, distant reeds, and the faint sweetness of date palms swaying beyond the city walls. Somewhere nearby, a clay lamp flickers softly before its flame is carefully lowered. Another rooftop grows dark, then another. Across the city, tiny points of warm light disappear one by one, like little stars returning to the earth. Night has fully arrived. Without the bright lights of the modern world, darkness feels different here. It is not frightening, it is peaceful. The moon hangs above the city, bathing the flat rooftops in a gentle silver glow. The shadows it casts are soft rather than harsh. Mud brick walls that seemed golden at sunset now appear pale and quiet beneath the moonlight. The family begins preparing for sleep. The youngest child has already become drowsy. His eyes grow heavier with every passing minute. He tries to listen as the adults continue their quiet conversation, but before long, his head gently rests against his mother's shoulder. She smiles. Without waking him, she carefully lifts him into her arms. It is a scene that has happened in homes across the world for thousands of years. Some moments belong to every generation. Inside the house, the air remains pleasantly cool. The thick mud brick walls have protected the rooms from the day's heat, and now they slowly release that warmth back into the night. The woven sleeping mats that were rolled away before sunrise are carefully spread across the floor once again. Blankets woven from wool are folded neatly nearby, ready for the cooler hours before dawn. Nothing about the routine feels hurried. Every movement is familiar. Every task has been repeated so many times that no one needs to think about it. One family member checks the clay water jar near the doorway. There is enough for the night. Another gently covers the remaining food from dinner with a woven cloth to keep away insects. The cooking fire, now reduced to glowing embers, is covered with ash. A few warm coals will remain until morning, making it easier to light the next day's fire.
Even preparing for tomorrow begins before today has completely ended. Outside, the neighborhood grows wonderfully still. The laughter of children has faded. The conversations between neighbors have ended. Only the occasional murmur drifts from a distant rooftop, where one family has chosen to stay beneath the stars a little longer. A dog curls into a comfortable circle beside a wooden cart. Its ears twitch once before it settles completely. Nearby, several goats lie quietly inside a small courtyard. Even they seem grateful for the coolness of the night. From somewhere beyond the city walls comes the steady chorus of frogs singing beside the canals. Crickets answer from the dry grass. Together, they create a gentle melody that never quite repeats itself. It is the soundtrack of the Mesopotamian night. Far above, the stars continue their slow journey across the heavens. Some of the brightest now stand almost directly overhead. For countless generations, these same stars have watched over the people below. They watched the first villages grow into towns. They watched those towns become cities. They watched children become parents, and parents become grandparents. Empires may rise, kings may come and go, but the stars remain patient witnesses to it all. One elderly man steps quietly outside his home for one final look at the sky. Perhaps he has done this every evening for as long as he can remember. He studies the familiar constellations for a few silent moments. Then, satisfied, he returns indoors. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another day of work, another opportunity to care for his family.
That is enough. Near the temple, a small group of priests quietly completes the final duties of the day. The courtyards are peaceful now. The offerings have been stored. The lamps burn softly. Soon even these sacred halls will rest beneath the silence of the night. The great temple, which stood proudly above the city throughout the day, now watches over sleeping streets. Its towering silhouette blends gently into the darkness. Along the riverbank, several fishing boats remain tied securely to wooden posts. The water moves almost silently around them. Occasionally, the surface ripples as a fish breaks the stillness, before disappearing once more into the darkness. The rivers never truly sleep. They continue flowing north to south, just as they did yesterday, just as they will tomorrow, just as they have for thousands of years. It is easy to understand why the people of Mesopotamia built their lives around these waters. They are constant in a world where so much else changes. Back inside the family's home, everyone has settled onto their sleeping mats. The youngest child is already dreaming, perhaps of the bustling marketplace, perhaps of the potter shaping clay, perhaps of the bright stars stretching endlessly overhead. His father quietly adjusts the blanket over him before lying down beside the rest of the family. No one speaks anymore. There is nothing left that needs to be said. The day's work has been completed. The meals have been shared. The stories have been told. The tools have been put away. The city has earned its rest. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the silence itself. Not an empty silence, but one filled with tiny sounds that often go unnoticed. The whisper of the evening breeze through palm leaves, the distant splash of river water against a wooden boat, the soft breathing of a sleeping family, the occasional chirp of a nightbird hidden somewhere beyond the rooftops. These quiet sounds have surrounded this city for thousands of years, long before history books, long before museums, long before anyone would one day uncover these streets beneath layers of earth. For the people living here tonight, tomorrow is simply another ordinary day. They do not know that thousands of years in the future, people across the world will marvel at their cities, study their writing, and admire the civilization they helped create. They are not trying to make history.
They are simply living their lives. Perhaps that is what makes their stories so meaningful. Because history is not only written by kings or warriors, it is also written by farmers who repaired canals before sunrise, by potters whose hands shaped simple clay jars, by children who laughed in dusty streets, by parents who shared warm bread with their families after a long day's work, and by countless ordinary people whose names have long been forgotten, yet whose lives became the foundation upon which so much of our own world was built. As the moon slowly climbs higher above the sleeping city, the ancient streets grow quieter than ever. The rivers continue their endless journey through the darkness, carrying tomorrow a little closer with every passing moment. And beneath the same stars that still shine above us today, the people of Mesopotamia sleep peacefully, ready to greet another dawn when the first birds begin to sing once again.
The night passes quietly. No clocks mark the passing hours, no bells announce the approach of morning. Only the slow turning of the earth, unnoticed by everyone asleep below, carries the city gently toward another day. High above Mesopotamia, the stars begin to fade. One by one, the brightest points of light disappear into the deep blue sky. The moon sinks lower toward the western horizon. The cool air feels fresh against the rooftops, carrying with it the scent of damp soil from the riverbanks. It is the same breeze that drifted through these streets yesterday, and the day before that, and for generations beyond counting. Before the first bird sings, there is a remarkable moment. The city is completely still. Even the dogs remain asleep. The canals flow almost silently. The river reflects the faintest hint of silver along its surface. It is as though the whole world is holding its breath. Then, from somewhere beyond the date palms, a single bird calls. Its clear note hangs briefly in the quiet air. Another answers, then another. Within minutes, the dawn chorus spreads across the landscape. The city has not awakened yet, but nature already has. A pale ribbon of light slowly appears in the east. It grows brighter with each passing heartbeat. The outlines of houses begin to emerge from the darkness. The great temple, which only moments ago was little more than a shadow against the stars, gradually reveals its familiar shape once more. The broad terraces catch the first touch of morning light. Their mud brick walls glow softly, welcoming another sunrise. Inside the family's home, someone stirs beneath a woven blanket. The youngest child is still fast asleep, curled comfortably on his reed mat. Nearby, his father opens his eyes. For a few moments, he simply listens. The birds, the breeze, the distant murmur of flowing water. Another ordinary day has arrived. And in many ways, that ordinary day is a gift. He sits up quietly, careful not to wake the others. Outside, the eastern sky changes from deep blue to violet, then pink, then pale gold.
Light slips gently through the doorway. Dust floating in the air suddenly becomes visible, dancing lazily in the first rays of sunlight. One by one, the rest of the household awakens, not because an alarm has sounded, but because their bodies know this rhythm by heart. They have followed it since childhood. Their parents followed it before them. Their grandparents did the same. There is comfort in such familiarity. The woven sleeping mats are rolled neatly against the wall, blankets are folded. The room slowly transforms once again from a place of rest into a place of work. Yesterday's quiet routine begins again without a single word needing to be spoken. Outside, neighbors emerge from their homes almost at the same time. A woman opens her wooden door and smiles as she sees the familiar faces across the narrow street. An elderly man stretches his shoulders before picking up the broom made from bundled reeds. A young boy carries an empty clay jar, already preparing for his morning walk to collect fresh water. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels dramatic. Life simply continues. The baker rekindles yesterday's embers. Soon the smell of fresh bread begins drifting through the neighborhood once again. The potter steps into his workshop and gently places a fresh lump of clay upon his wheel. The carpenter runs his hand across a half-finished wooden stool before reaching for his bronze chisel.
The fishermen untie their boats from the riverbank, disappearing quietly into the morning mist. Farmers walk toward the canals while the air is still cool enough for comfortable work. Every person knows where the day will begin. Watching this peaceful routine, you begin to notice something remarkable. Although yesterday has ended, very little has truly changed. The same birds sing, the same river flows, the same ovens grow warm, the same footsteps echo through the same dusty streets. And yet, this is not repetition without meaning. Each day brings tiny differences. A child grows a little taller. A new basket is woven. A canal is repaired. A neighbor welcomes a newborn baby. Another family celebrates a successful harvest. History is built from these quiet moments, not only from battles or kings, but from ordinary mornings repeated across countless generations. The city slowly fills with familiar sounds. Grinding stones begin their steady rhythm. Donkeys carry fresh loads toward the marketplace. Children laugh as they chase one another before work begins. A merchant opens a woven bundle filled with colorful cloth. The temple priests prepare for another day of prayers and responsibilities. Every sound feels wonderfully familiar now. Yesterday they seemed ancient. Today they almost feel like home. You realize that after spending an entire day walking beside these people, they no longer feel distant. The farmer repairing a canal, the potter shaping clay, the young apprentice struggling to master writing, the grandmother sharing stories beneath the stars. Their names may have been lost to history, yet their lives somehow remain close enough to touch. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson this journey has offered. Civilizations are often remembered through monuments, but civilizations survive because ordinary people wake before sunrise, bake bread, care for children,
repair broken tools, help neighbors, share meals, tell stories, and greet each new morning with quiet determination. The first rays of sunlight now spread across the rooftops exactly as they did yesterday. Golden light fills the narrow streets. The city breathes deeply. Another day has begun. Another ordinary day, one almost identical to the last, yet no less precious because of it. As our footsteps slowly begin to fade from these familiar streets, you may find yourself looking back one last time, not at the towering temple, not at the busy marketplace, but at the little mud brick home where yesterday's journey first began. The door stands open once again. A child laughs inside. Fresh bread is baking. The family is beginning another ordinary day, completely unaware that, thousands of years later, someone would pause for a while, listen to their story, and remember them.
Even after most families have settled inside their homes, ancient Mesopotamia is not completely asleep. The city has grown wonderfully quiet. The laughter of children has faded. Cooking fires have become glowing embers. The marketplace stands empty beneath the moonlight, its woven stalls resting silently until another sunrise. Yet if you listen closely, you'll discover that the city still has a heartbeat. It simply beats more softly now. The cool evening breeze drifts through the narrow streets, carrying away the warmth stored in the mud brick walls throughout the day. Palm leaves whisper gently above shaded courtyards. Somewhere beyond the city walls, frogs continue their endless chorus beside the canals. The rivers never stop flowing, neither does life itself. As our eyes adjust to the darkness, a quiet figure appears at the far end of the street. He carries a simple oil lamp in one hand. Its small flame sways gently with every step, casting warm circles of light across the dusty ground. This is one of the city's night watchmen. His duty is not dramatic. He is not hunting dangerous criminals or chasing mysterious shadows through dark alleyways. Most nights pass peacefully, and everyone hopes they always will. Instead, his presence offers reassurance. He walks familiar streets that he has probably known since childhood. Every doorway, every corner, every small courtyard feels familiar. He pauses occasionally, listening. A dog barks briefly before recognizing him. The animal settles down again. The watchman smiles quietly and continues walking. He knows nearly every family living along this street. He knows which elderly neighbor wakes before dawn each morning. He knows where the potter stores freshly fired jars. He knows which household welcomed a newborn child only a few weeks ago. Protecting the city is not simply about guarding buildings. It is about watching over people. Farther ahead, another watchman appears, approaching from the opposite direction. When they meet, they exchange only a few quiet words. Perhaps they mention that all is peaceful. Perhaps they speak of tomorrow's weather. Their conversation lasts only moments, before each continues along his own route. The streets return to silence. High above them, the stars shine with remarkable clarity.
Without lamps lining the roads, the night sky becomes the city's brightest roof. The Milky Way stretches from one horizon to the other, like a silver river flowing across the heavens. Many people have already fallen asleep beneath these stars. Some families still rest on their flat rooftops, where the cooler air makes sleeping more comfortable during warm seasons. A father gently pulls a wool blanket over his young daughter after the temperature begins to drop. She never wakes. Nearby, her grandmother opens her eyes for just a moment. She looks towards the stars she has watched for nearly a lifetime. Perhaps she silently recognizes familiar constellations. Perhaps she simply enjoys their quiet company before drifting back to sleep. Not every home is completely silent. From one rooftop comes the soft cry of a tiny baby. The mother gently lifts the child into her arms. She rocks slowly, whispering words too quiet for anyone else to hear. Within moments, the baby settles once again. Across thousands of years, that gentle rhythm remains unchanged. Parents have always known how to comfort a restless child in the middle of the night. Beyond the houses, the city gates remain closed until morning. 2 guards sit beneath a small shelter built beside the heavy wooden entrance. Their bronze-tipped spears rest against the wall nearby. One quietly adds another piece of wood to a small fire. The flames flicker softly. Neither man seems eager for excitement. A peaceful night is always the best kind of night. Occasionally, they glance towards the open countryside stretching into darkness beyond the walls. Nothing moves except the tall grasses swaying in the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a jackal calls. The sound echoes briefly across the plain before disappearing once more into silence. One guard smiles knowingly. He has heard that call countless times. It belongs to the night as surely as birds belong to the dawn. Closer to the river, several fishing boats remain tied securely beside the muddy bank. The water reflects both the moon and the stars, creating the illusion of another sky beneath the boats. A fisherman sleeping nearby wakes briefly, not because of danger. Simply because years of living beside the river have made him sensitive to every change in its voice. He listens. The water sounds normal. The current is steady. Satisfied, he closes his eyes again. Generations of experience have taught him that rivers speak in subtle ways.
a rising current, an unusual splash, a shift in the wind. Every sound carries meaning to those who know how to listen. Elsewhere in the city, the temple stands quietly beneath the moonlight. Its broad terraces cast long shadows across the empty courtyard. The day's prayers have ended. The incense has long since faded. Only a few lamps burn softly near the sacred entrance. Even the priests rest now. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another cycle of prayers, another day guiding the spiritual life of the city. There is no need to hurry. Morning always arrives in its own time. If you stand perfectly still, another remarkable sound becomes noticeable. Silence itself. Not complete silence, but the gentle kind that exists only after an entire city has finished its work. The whisper of wind through palm leaves, the distant murmur of flowing water, a sleeping bird shifting its wings, the faint crackle of cooling clay ovens, the slow breathing of families resting peacefully behind mud brick walls. These are the sounds that rarely appear in history books, yet they filled the nights of Mesopotamia for thousands of years. They are every bit as much a part of this civilization as its temples, its kings, or its famous clay tablets. Because long after great rulers were forgotten, ordinary people still slept peacefully, children still dreamed, parents still hoped tomorrow would bring good weather, farmers still trusted the rivers, craftsmen still planned the work waiting for them with the next sunrise. Life continued quietly, steadily, beautifully, and beneath the endless stars above Mesopotamia, another peaceful night slowly carried the ancient city toward a brand new dawn.
The night passes as countless nights have before it. The stars slowly fade. The first light of morning touches the tops of the temple walls. Soon another ordinary day begins. The baker kneads fresh dough. The fishermen untie their boats. The potter shapes another jar from a lump of river clay. Children laugh as they run through the same narrow streets. No one notices that this day is any different from yesterday. And that is exactly the point. For the people of Mesopotamia, life is not made of grand endings, it simply continues. One season follows another, one harvest replaces the last, one generation quietly hands the city to the next. Years become decades, decades become centuries. New children are born inside the same homes where their grandparents once learnt to walk. Old walls are repaired instead of replaced. New canals branch away from older ones. The city changes so slowly that almost nobody notices it happening, but time always notices. The rivers that once brought rich, fertile soil begin leaving behind tiny layers of silt year after year. A single flood covers a courtyard with only a thin blanket of mud. No one worries. The family sweeps most of it away. Life goes on. Another flood arrives years later, then another. Each one leaves behind only a little more earth than the last, hardly enough for anyone to think about, but centuries are patient. Wind carries fine dust across the plains, summer after summer, winter after winter. The smallest grains settle quietly over abandoned paths and forgotten walls. Nature never hurries, it simply keeps working. Some families move to growing cities further north, others leave after difficult harvests. Some neighborhoods slowly become quieter than they once were. Markets that echoed with voices every morning eventually fall silent. Workshops where potters once shaped hundreds of jars stand empty. The great ovens grow cold.
The reeds growing beside unused canals become taller every year. Without constant care, the water begins choosing new paths. Even mighty cities depend upon ordinary people. When those people leave, the city slowly changes with them. The temple still stands for a long time. Its broad terraces continue rising proudly above the plain. But wind smooths the sharp edges of its bricks. Rain softens the mortar. Plants find tiny cracks where their roots can grow. Year after year, the earth gently begins reclaiming what people once built. No dramatic collapse. No single moment when everything ends. Only countless quiet changes, almost impossible to notice from one lifetime to the next. Imagine standing on this same spot hundreds of years later. The bustling marketplace is gone. The laughter of children has faded into memory. The houses now rest beneath low hills of packed earth.
A traveler passing nearby might never guess that an entire city sleeps beneath his feet. To him, it is simply another rise in the landscape, a place where grass grows a little differently. Perhaps shepherds rest there while watching their sheep. Perhaps birds build nests among scattered pieces of ancient brick. The city waits patiently beneath the ground, silent, hidden, almost forgotten, but not truly lost.
Because history has a remarkable habit of leaving behind small clues. A broken clay jar, a child's toy, a bronze knife, a carefully carved cylinder seal. Most remarkable of all, the clay tablets. Those simple tablets, pressed by careful hands thousands of years earlier, remain protected beneath layers of earth. The same damp clay that once recorded grain harvests, school lessons, marriage agreements, and prayers has become hard as stone, waiting, patiently, for someone to read those words again. Thousands of years pass, empires rise and disappear, new languages fill the world, ships cross oceans, great cities appear in places the people of Mesopotamia could never have imagined. Yet beneath the quiet fields of Iraq, the ancient city remains asleep. One spring morning, long after the last Mesopotamian family has vanished from memory, someone notices an unusual mound. It does not look quite natural. Curiosity leads to careful digging. A single brick appears, then another. Soon, fragments of pottery emerge from the soil. A clay tablet follows, then a wall, then an entire room. Little by little, the sleeping city begins to awaken, not for its own people, but for ours. Archaeologists work slowly, patiently, much like the craftsmen we met earlier. Every brushstroke matters. Every shard of pottery is carefully recorded. Every footprint of the past deserves respect. They are not searching for treasure. They are searching for understanding. One tiny object can reveal an entire story. A worn sandal tells us how people walked. Seeds preserved in dry earth reveal what they ate. A cracked cooking pot speaks of everyday meals. Fingerprints pressed into wet clay by a potter 4,000 years ago remain visible even now. Think about that for a moment. The potter never imagined that someone, living thousands of years in the future, would one day place a finger gently beside his own, separated by millennia, connected by something as simple as a fingerprint. It is a quietly beautiful thought. The more archaeologists uncover, the more familiar the ancient city becomes, not because they discover great kings, although those are important, but because they discover ordinary lives, homes, bread ovens, children's footprints, school tablets covered with writing exercises, broken bowls repaired instead of thrown away, exactly the kind of lives we have spent this peaceful journey exploring together. Slowly, the people of Mesopotamia begin speaking again, not with voices, but through the objects they left behind. A clay tablet tells us about a merchant. A woven basket leaves an impression in dried mud. A worn doorway reminds us that thousands of hands once passed through it. History returns, one quiet discovery at a time. And as the morning sun rises over the ancient land once more, you begin to realize something extraordinary. Although the people we walked beside are long gone, their story never truly disappeared. It was simply waiting beneath the sand for someone patient enough to listen.
Simply because years of living beside the river have made him sensitive to every change in its voice. He listens. The water sounds normal. The current is steady. Satisfied, he closes his eyes again. Generations of experience have taught him that rivers speak in subtle ways. A rising current, an unusual splash, a shift in the wind. Every sound carries meaning to those who know how to listen. Elsewhere in the city, the temple stands quietly beneath the moonlight. Its broad terraces cast long shadows across the empty courtyard. The day's prayers have ended. The incense has long since faded. Only a few lamps burn softly near the sacred entrance. Even the priests rest now. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another cycle of prayers, another day guiding the spiritual life of the city. There is no need to hurry. Morning always arrives in its own time. If you stand perfectly still, another remarkable sound becomes noticeable. Silence itself. Not complete silence, but the gentle kind that exists only after an entire city has finished its work.
The whisper of wind through palm leaves, the distant murmur of flowing water, a sleeping bird shifting its wings, the faint crackle of cooling clay ovens, the slow breathing of families resting peacefully behind mud brick walls. These are the sounds that rarely appear in history books, yet they filled the nights of Mesopotamia for thousands of years. They are every bit as much a part of this civilization as its temples, its kings, or its famous clay tablets. Because long after great rulers were forgotten, ordinary people still slept peacefully, children still dreamed, parents still hoped tomorrow would bring good weather, farmers still trusted the rivers, craftsmen still planned the work waiting for them with the next sunrise. Life continued quietly, steadily, beautifully, and beneath the endless stars above Mesopotamia, another peaceful night slowly carried the ancient city toward a brand new dawn.
They shared responsibility. If one section failed, everyone felt the consequences. It was an early reminder that strong communities are built through shared effort, not individual success alone. The same lesson still guides towns and cities around the world today. The family we spent the day with also understood something equally timeless. Knowledge grows stronger when it is passed from one generation to the next. We watched a grandfather explain the stars to his grandchildren. We saw a teacher patiently guiding young scribes as they learned to press careful symbols into clay. We listened to stories shared during the evening meal. Long before schools filled with printed books, learning happened through conversation, observation, and quiet patience. In many ways, it still does. Some of the world's oldest written laws also emerged from this land. People wanted clear rules so neighbors could live together fairly in growing cities. Those laws were not always perfect, no society ever is, but they reflected an important idea. Communities function best when expectations are shared rather than guessed. It was another small step in humanity's long journey towards organized civilization. Then there was time itself. Did you notice how often the people of Mesopotamia looked towards the sky, the rising sun, the changing moon, the familiar appearance of certain stars? These were not simply beautiful sights. They helped determine when to plant crops, prepare for floods, and celebrate important festivals. Their careful observations eventually shaped calendars that influenced many civilizations after them. Even today, our lives still follow rhythms measured by days, months, and seasons. The methods have become more precise, but the habit of watching time began long ago. Perhaps the most surprising gift, however, cannot be held in your hands. It is perspective. Throughout our journey, we met no famous king, no legendary conqueror.
No mighty general standing triumphantly before cheering crowds. Instead, we spent our day with ordinary people, a baker, a potter, a fisherman, a farmer, children running through dusty streets, grandparents sharing stories beneath the stars. And yet, without those ordinary people, there would have been no extraordinary civilization. That may be the quiet lesson Mesopotamia still offers us today. History is often remembered through the names of rulers, but history is built by millions whose names were never written down. The hands that shaped bricks, the voices that comforted children, the neighbors who repaired canals together, the scribes who carefully recorded one more harvest before sunset. Civilizations rise because ordinary people keep showing up each day to do ordinary things remarkably well. Perhaps that is why walking through ancient Mesopotamia has felt strangely comforting. The clothes were different, the houses were different, the language has long since faded, yet kindness still looked like kindness, curiosity still looked like curiosity. A parent's love for a child needed no translation, neither did the satisfaction of sharing warm bread after a long day's work. Across 4,000 years, those feelings remain wonderfully familiar. Now, as the gentle morning light spreads across the ancient plain one final time, you may notice that the city no longer feels distant, it feels connected. Not because we have traveled into the past, but because the past has quietly traveled with us. Every time we write a note, share a meal with family, help a neighbor, teach a child, or pause beneath a sky filled with stars, we unknowingly echo countless moments lived by people who once called Mesopotamia home. Their cities became ruins, their voices faded, their names were mostly forgotten, yet the ideas they nurtured continued their journey, flowing from generation to generation, much like the Tigris and Euphrates themselves, steady, patient, enduring. And as our peaceful walk through one ordinary day in ancient Mesopotamia gently reaches its final moments, there is only one thing left to do. Let the rivers continue flowing, let the city settle once more into quiet memory, and allow ourselves just for a little while to rest beneath the same timeless sky that has watched over every generation before us.
Our journey is almost over now. There is no need to hurry, no final lesson to memorize, no great mystery left to solve. Instead, let us simply remain here for a little while longer, where the ancient world and the present seem to meet in perfect silence. Take one last slow look across the city. The morning sun has climbed a little higher now, bathing the mud brick homes in a warm golden light. The narrow streets are alive once more. Somewhere, a baker slides fresh loaves into a clay oven. A potter gently steadies his wheel before shaping another vessel from river clay. Children chase one another between familiar doorways, their laughter echoing against walls that have already witnessed countless generations. Life continues, just as it always has. The family we spent the day with has already disappeared into their daily routines. The father is walking toward the fields, where the canals quietly carry water through rich soil. The mother is preparing another meal with calm, practiced hands. The grandmother pauses in the doorway for a moment, watching the children before smiling to herself. The youngest child waves excitedly to a friend waiting in the street. None of them know we were ever here. And somehow, that makes this farewell even more beautiful. They are not performing for history. They are simply living it. Perhaps that is what makes ordinary lives so extraordinary. Long after great palaces crumble, long after kings are forgotten, it is the quiet rhythm of everyday people that continues to shape the world. A loaf of bread shared around a family meal, a lesson patiently taught to a child, a neighbor lending a helping hand.
A canal repaired before sunrise, a story told beneath a sky filled with stars. These simple moments are the true heartbeat of every civilization. The rivers continue their endless journey. The Tigris and the Euphrates have flowed through these lands for thousands upon thousands of years. They watched the first villages become cities. They reflected the lights of temples, marketplaces, and family homes. They carried boats filled with grain, clay, timber, and hope. Even now, their waters continue onward, never rushing, never stopping. There is something comforting about that. The world changes, people come and go, generations pass like the seasons, and yet some things remain beautifully constant. The sunrise, the flowing river, the stars overhead, the love shared within a family, the quiet satisfaction of honest work, the simple joy of sitting together after a long day. Perhaps those are the threads that connect every generation, no matter how many centuries lie between them. As we gently begin making our way back to the present, notice how different history feels now. It is no longer a collection of distant dates and forgotten names. It feels warmer, closer, almost familiar. When you think of Mesopotamia now, you may not first imagine towering temples or ancient kings. Instead, you might remember the smell of fresh bread drifting through a quiet street, the sound of a reed stylus scratching across damp clay, the cool breeze arriving from the rivers at sunset, the laughter of children playing with smooth stones.
The peaceful silence that settled over the rooftops after the last story had been told. Those are the memories that stay with us, because they remind us that history is not only about remarkable events, it is about ordinary people living ordinary days. Days filled with work, with kindness, with hope, with family, with simple moments that seemed small at the time, yet together became the foundation of civilization. And perhaps, somewhere in the distant future, people will look back on our own ordinary lives with the same quiet curiosity. They may wonder what our homes smelled like after dinner, what stories we shared with those we loved, what sounds filled our evenings as the world slowly settled into night. History is always being written. Usually we never notice it while it happens. The ancient people of Mesopotamia certainly didn't. They simply welcomed each sunrise, cared for one another, and trusted that tomorrow would arrive just as faithfully as today. Before we leave, lift your eyes one final time. Above the ancient city stretches the same vast sky that still watches over us today.
The same stars that shone above Mesopotamia thousands of years ago still appear when night falls. The same moon still rises. The same constellations still drift across the heavens. Empires have risen and disappeared beneath that sky. Languages have changed. Cities have grown and vanished. Yet the heavens have remained a quiet companion to every generation. There is something deeply comforting in that thought. So now, wherever you are listening from tonight, perhaps your room is already dark and peaceful. Perhaps your eyes are beginning to feel wonderfully heavy. Perhaps you can almost imagine the gentle sound of river water flowing somewhere in the distance, the whisper of wind moving through tall reeds, the faint song of crickets beneath a sky full of stars, and the quiet breathing of an ancient city resting peacefully after another ordinary day. Thank you for spending this gentle journey through a day in the life of an ancient Mesopotamian. Thank you for walking beside farmers, potters, scribes, merchants, parents, children, and neighbors whose ordinary lives quietly helped shape the history of our world. Until our next peaceful journey into the past, may your mind be calm, may your dreams be gentle, and may you sleep as peacefully as the ancient city resting beneath the timeless stars of Mesopotamia. Good night.